Have you ever wondered what truly stirs the heart of a man who commands the world's most powerful office when the night grows silent and shadows deepen around him? What thoughts occupy his mind when the applause fades and only the quiet remains? Late one cold and rainy night, deep within the vast echoing halls of the White House, President Donald Trump found himself restless. The world outside was cloaked in darkness, but inside his mind was a tempest of swirling emotions. He had just finished reading a letter, a simple note from Claire Bennett, the wife of a wounded veteran he had recently honored in a solemn ceremony. Her words were humble, yet deeply heartfelt, thanking him for acknowledging the pain and sacrifices endured by her husband. Yet beneath the surface of gratitude, something in the letter unsettled him profoundly. He rose from his desk, the polished wood cold beneath his palms, and began to pace slowly through the grand corridor. His footsteps echoed, heavy and deliberate, mixing with the rhythmic tapping of raindrops against the tall windows. The weight of the presidency, usually borne with a fierce pride, felt unbearably heavy in that still hour. For a moment, he wished to escape the relentless demands of power and politics, the endless speeches, the sharp criticisms, the constant expectations. Without quite realizing why, he slipped quietly out of the residence, pulling his coat tighter as he stepped into the cold night air. The rain soaked his hair, ran down his collar, but he barely noticed. His thoughts were far away, wrestling with questions no one else could see or hear. What did it truly mean to lead with compassion? Could he somehow transcend the public image, the caricature painted by the media, and become something more? His feet carried him instinctively toward a place he had often passed but rarely entered. St. Matthew's Church, a small, humble sanctuary nestled just a short walk from the White House grounds. The wooden door creaked softly as he pushed it open, and immediately the scent of old oak and candle wax wrapped around him like a gentle embrace. Inside, Reverend Harper stood quietly near the altar, his face marked by years of wisdom and kindness. Nearby, Mrs. Hazel Lorraine Carter, a longtime parishioner known for her comforting presence, arranged hymn books with deliberate care. The church was nearly empty, save for the soft flicker of candles casting long shadows along the stone walls. President Trump cleared his throat softly, feeling awkward and out of place, but compelled to stay. Reverend Harper turned slowly, his eyes calm and steady, a gentle curiosity in his gaze. "Mr. President," Reverend Harper said quietly, "what brings you here on such a stormy night?" Trump hesitated, searching for the right words. "I needed a moment away from the noise, the pressure from myself," he admitted in a low voice, almost a whisper. Mrs. Carter approached, her smile warm and steady. "Sometimes the heaviest burdens are carried in silence," she said softly. "You're not alone in this room." Trump nodded slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing just slightly. He lowered himself onto one of the wooden pews and knelt, closing his eyes as the rain continued its soft drumming against the stained glass windows. The simple act of kneeling, something he rarely allowed himself, felt strangely liberating, as if for the first time he was allowing himself to be vulnerable. From the back of the church, the choir director, Mrs. Carter, began to sing. Her voice was clear and haunting as she lifted the first notes of Amazing Grace, filling the quiet space with a profound sense of hope and longing. The melody wrapped around Trump, washing over him like a gentle tide, stirring a deep vulnerability within him, a feeling foreign yet deeply needed. As the hymn ended, Mrs. Carter stepped forward and gently handed him a small wooden cross, its surface worn smooth by the passage of time. "This is a reminder," she said softly, "that grace is not given because we are perfect, but because we are willing to try." Trump accepted the cross, his fingers tracing the smooth edges. For the first time in a long while, the weight he felt was no longer the crushing burden of the world's expectations, but the fragile possibility of change. Outside, the rain softened to a gentle drizzle, but inside St. Matthew's Church, a quiet transformation was unfolding. President Trump sat still, clutching the wooden cross as if it were an anchor for his restless soul. Reverend Harper settled beside him, offering neither judgment nor expectation, only steady presence. Have you ever wondered what it means to truly listen, not just to words but to the heart behind them? Reverend Harper asked thoughtfully, his gaze steady and penetrating. Trump looked up, voice low and deliberate. I've always believed leadership was about strength, making decisions without hesitation, showing power. But tonight, I'm beginning to understand there's a different kind of strength, a quieter, deeper one. Mrs. Carter returned, carrying a tray with 2 cups of warm tea. She handed one to Trump, who accepted it silently. The heat seeped into his cold fingers, and for the first time in days, a flicker of calm settled inside him. Strength is not the absence of struggle, Mrs. Carter said softly. It is the courage to face that struggle with an open heart, to forgive, to change, and to find peace in the process. Trump absorbed her words, memories flooding back countless meetings, the sharp sting of criticism, the soldiers he had met whose wounds ran far deeper than any visible scar. He thought again of Claire Bennett's letter, and the man behind it, the veteran who had sacrificed so much. Why does it take pain, sacrifice, and grace to teach us what we should have known all along? Trump murmured almost to himself. Reverend Harper nodded slowly. Because sometimes the hardest lessons come not from power or victory, but from humility. And humility opens the door to empathy. A silence settled over the room, heavy, yet not uncomfortable. Trump's eyes rested on the cross in his hand, the simple wooden shape a reminder of his own fragility beneath the public persona. I don't want to be just a leader who makes decisions from a distance, he finally confessed. I want to be someone who truly sees people, who understands their stories. Mrs. Carter smiled gently. That, Mr. President, is the beginning of a true leader's journey. As the night deepened, Trump found himself sharing stories he had never voiced aloud, moments of doubt, fear, and hope. The rain outside had stopped, but inside the small church, a quiet revolution was unfolding. The following days passed in a blur of meetings and media appearances, but beneath the surface, something profound had shifted. The encounter at St. Matthew's Church lingered in his thoughts like a whisper urging him to look beyond the headlines, beyond politics, to the human stories waiting to be heard. One afternoon, with the wooden cross carefully tucked in his jacket pocket, he visited Walter Reed Medical Center to meet the injured veteran Claire Bennett had written about. Walking through the sterile hospital halls, Trump felt a mix of nerves and determination, unlike anything he had known. When he reached the soldier's room, he was met with weary eyes and a cautious smile. I heard about your courage, Trump said warmly, stepping forward. Your sacrifice means more than words can express. The veteran looked up, visibly moved. Thank you, sir. It's not easy, but hearing that makes a difference. They spoke for a long while about pain, resilience, and hope. Trump listened more than he spoke, his usual confident tone softened by genuine empathy. As he left Walter Reed, Trump paused to reflect on the subtle but powerful changes taking root in his heart. The vulnerability at the church, the lessons from Reverend Harper and Mrs. Carter, and the courage of the soldiers he now truly saw, all had carved a new path for him. He realized leadership wasn't just about commanding or winning, it was about serving and connecting. In the solitude of that rainy night, far from the flashing cameras and roaring crowds, something quietly shifted within Donald Trump. It was not a grand gesture or a public speech, but a small moment of vulnerability, a wooden cross given with a song of grace that opened a door inside him. Through that door came humility, empathy, and a new way of seeing the world. This was the beginning of a quiet revolution in his heart and leadership, a realization that true power lies not in the loudest voice or the strongest hand, but in the courage to listen, to understand, and to care deeply for others. As he moved forward, the president carried with him not just the weight of his office, but the gentle reminder that behind every decision are human stories waiting to be seen and honored. And perhaps in embracing this truth, the greatest legacy of that rainy night would not be found in policies or headlines, but in the subtle, lasting impact of a leader who learned the power of grace. Let's keep the conversation going. Subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts below. Your perspective is valuable and might inspire others.